Welcome to Deep Work Out Loud, the thinking that fuels our life, our work, and our leadership. I'm Julie Harris Oliver. This is the podcast where I sit with another professional coach and we do some work around a single concept, a piece of inspiration, a topic we've been thinking about, something that's been coming up in our coaching. And if we're very lucky, while we're talking about it, we might demonstrate what coaching might look and feel like, what you might experience when you work with a coach. But we'll see how this goes. It's all an experiment. With any luck, you'll leave with something that you can apply and use in your work or your life, or both. Today, I'm here with Heather Pomerantz. With more than 25 years of experience as a senior finance executive, including serving as CFO of a public company, Heather brings a rare blend of operational expertise, strategic leadership, and personal insight into her work as an executive coach. Her background spans management consulting and corporate finance, where she led complex restructurings, developed high-performing teams, and navigating the challenges of balancing executive responsibilities with family life. Known throughout her career as a trusted mentor and advisor, Heather is passionate about the science of high performance and the power of mindset. Her own journey, including completing 8 marathons, raising a family, and leading through high-stakes business transformations, has shaped her belief that human potential is limitless and that mindset is a skill that can be developed to unlock that potential. Today, Heather partners with senior leaders to build sustainable performance across all aspects of life, career, family, and self. Her coaching approach is deeply personal and grounded in connection, offering the safety and trust required to challenge assumptions, explore purpose, and spark meaningful change. Heather is an ACC with the International Coaching Federation and a Hudson Certified Coach. Her coaching is rooted in the belief that performance and purpose are deeply intertwined, and when leaders align both, they unlock their greatest potential to lead with clarity, resilience, and impact. I'm telling you, this is the work the world needs right now. Hi, Heather. Welcome.
Hi, Julie. Thank you. Thank you for the intro.
Is it weird to have your intro right in front of you?
Yeah.
That's usually people's least favorite part.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us what led you into coaching?
Yeah. So my journey, I think, as a coach started when I was 8 years old, actually.
What?
So there were many, many signs. And the first was when I was 8 years old, sitting in the lobby of the apartment building that I lived in with Abe. And Abe was probably 85 at the time. And he would sit in the lobby and I would sit with him for hours, just talking and listening and hearing his stories. And I don't think I knew it at the time, but I'm pretty sure I was creating space for him to share and reflect. And I absolutely loved it. And I actually really vividly remember it, where, you have these sort of vivid moments when you think back to your childhood. And the next moment was at summer camp. I went to sleepaway camp my whole life, so ages 10 to 19. And I have also these memories of sitting and having one-on-one connection with folks, sitting under trees in nature, connecting, talking, sharing, and lots of listening. And as I continued in my journey in life, I went to Penn. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I tried everything. I did have a moment, I remember, in the middle of campus, looking at the buildings and thinking, I really want to study psychology. And I can remember, again, it's a vivid memory of standing by the psychology building on the main Walker campus. And then I pivoted. I went to Wharton. I studied finance and marketing. I did what honestly externally seemed right. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was definitely an influence of being there on campus, what I thought I should do, what I thought maybe my family thought I should do. And that was the start of my achievement arc in life. And, I was a competitive person. I liked achievement. I loved business. So it wasn't that I wasn't pursuing something that I wasn't pursuing something I disliked, but it was certainly, fast forward to where I am now, not exactly what I wanted to be doing in life. But I had an amazing career. I spent 20 years at Unilever. Like you said, I did some consulting up front. And I loved the thrill of achievement. I loved the recognition. I grew in my career fast. Unilever was an amazing place to have a career. And also what was amazing about Unilever was how they led with purpose. And it was my real learning journey at Unilever, self-discovery about one, my passion for people and leadership. And I started to become that go-to mentor and really get known for my people leadership. But also I discovered through lots of workshops and self-work that they offered us that living your purpose in work and in life was going to make me a much, much better leader. And so I had this moment in 2015, so 10 years ago, where I went to Singapore through Unilever. It was for VPs, newly promoted VPs. And I had just got promoted into my VP role. And it was a week in Singapore to discover my purpose. And it had nothing to do with the business. It was all about really exploring through reflection, deep reflection, and lots of just time to discover what really drove me. And when I left at the end of the week, I had a purpose statement. And a big part of that purpose statement was a metaphor of me sitting under that tree at summer camp and having one-on-one connection. So I kept on the career journey. I stayed in the achievement arc. I kept going. Like you said, after I left Unilever, I became a CFO. So I had 2 experiences as a CFO. And I continued to be super passionate about the people side. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was I started to not feel comfortable in my role. And I wasn't truly living. I would wake up in the morning and I thought, okay, I'm a CFO. I should read the Wall Street Journal. And I didn't want to. I wanted to call my right-hand guy and talk to him about everything that we were doing in the team and how he was doing and his development. That's what I wanted to be spending time on. Mm. And so fast forward to now, it's been 2 years, but at the end of my second CFO role, I said, this is the time and I'm going to do it. And it's non-negotiable. At that point, I guess we'll probably talk about how do you know when you're living your purpose or being authentic. I was in physical pain to not do it. I had to do it. And I told my husband, who was an amazing stay-at-home dad, I said, I'm doing this and it's going to take a bit of time. I told him 6 months, 2 years later, but here I am and can't be happier.
Do you think, and I'm sure we'll get into this, do you think it takes until you're in physical pain to make that change?
I hope not. My immediate answer is no. Because I think if you're open to understanding what brings you joy and spending time on it, which is hopefully what we'll get into here, what I'd love to share is being able to do that actually allows you to bring that into your life right away and not have to wait. I waited, and in part, there are reality checks, right? There's financial needs, there's family needs, there's things that can get in the way, but there's also external pressure. There's external pressure to be successful, to have the title, to have the income level, right? All those measures, which also can take you into a certain place. And I was an achiever since I was a kid. And so I did like that. And I still am an achiever, just in a different way.
Okay, so name the thing we're going to talk about today.
So the title I thought of was Living Your Authentic Self.
What does that mean?
And what it means is understanding what brings you joy, understanding your core values, and then living them and not waiting to live them, understanding how aligned you are, and then building strategies to actually bring that into your life every day.
Where do you begin?
When I work with clients, where do I begin?
Begin as a person to do that?
Where do you begin? Step 1 is to understand. And so it starts with a simple reflection on what are your core values. And if you look it up and do a Google search on core values, you'll find 1,000 different ways to identify your core values, tons of free tools, online tools, and they'll put words up. And it does start with a simple list of words, right? Mm-hmm. And really just taking time to think about, just by looking at the words, what are words that resonate with you, that bring you a feeling inside that this is where you want to be spending time, that this is important to you. And it could you might start with a list of 15, 30 words. And then it's taking time to really reflect and hone and getting it down to a list of what I call, and is called in general, core values. And actually I was listening to the Brene Brown, Adam Grant podcast that we were talking about at one point. And she says two core values.
Yeah.
is where she pushes to, because everything else is reflected in that, I think, is her point. I like 5 to 7. I think it allows for some open-mindedness, some variety, but keeping it tight is important. So don't leave it at a list of 15 to 30, because then it's really hard to assess your alignment.
Mm-hmm.
The second step is to define them.
Wait, can we go back?
Yeah.
To the values for a minute? Because I remember when someone asked me that, I think we were in class and you said something about core values. And I was like, what are you talking about? I never had done any of that work, had no idea what it meant. I was like, how are you supposed to? So going through the words and then listening to how Brene Brown and Adam Grant talked about it that day. Because you can have your list of 30, but if you really start to discuss every single one, this matters because it'll get you to the next level because of this, because it scoops up under this. And he went through an exercise of challenging Brene to get down to her 2. And he just kept asking, why? Then what happens? Then what happens? Until she got to the point of, because that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
So when you get down to that, because that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah. I would call that something different, actually.
Go.
I think when you get it down to that single essence of what really matters to you, it's your purpose.
Okay.
And I think there's a way through the process, and I offer this to clients, of starting with that big list, honing it, defining it, but ultimately distilling it into your purpose. Okay. And it's very powerful.
Step 2.
Step 2 is going back. So you have the list, is to define them according to what it means to you. You and I, for example, might both have freedom as a core value, but I might define that totally different than you in terms of how it shows up in my life and how I want it to show up in my life. So taking the time to actually describe it, and it allows you also to, I think, cluster the words. And so bringing them really down to the core, which is a way to simplify and really create meaning for yourself.
Now I feel like I so jumped ahead of you and I jumped in before. It's funny you bring that up as an example, because freedom is a core value of mine. Mm-hmm. It might be fun to talk about what that means. What does that mean to you?
For me, it's not in my purpose statement. The word freedom, if I was to define it for myself, would be to have the flexibility to be able to be my true self and have the time to do all the things that I want to be doing. So it's really about, I think of freedom as freedom to be me. How about you?
I had this whole list in my head until you said freedom to be me. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's probably it. For me, the list of freedom is, yes, to do what I want to do, to live where I want to live, to have the flexibility I want to have. And also there's a big element of, I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be restrained by social constructs or social conditioning or roles that people think I should have, especially as a woman. Yeah. All of that bristles so much with me. Yeah. So I think freedom to be my whole self with all of my ambition and dreams and wants and all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you define it, the step after just what does it mean to you is to put it in a statement of, what are you doing? So when get it into that sort of, I am. So with respect to freedom, I am doing X, Y, and Z. And it really brings to life for you what it means. And then comes the next step.
Hey everyone, it's Julie here. I just wanted to interrupt for a quick sec to tell you something very exciting. My friend, Dr. Matt Codsey, who was on the podcast earlier talking about presence, has written a book. It's called A Story Tale, the ABCs of the Stories We Tell Ourselves. I'm going to read you the blurb real quick, and then you're going to go buy the book. How much of our time is spent trying to figure out what everyone else is thinking? How many stories do we write in our own heads to fill the gaps? Joe, our main character, is an executive for a software company who's just like the rest of us. He makes his way through life convincing himself that his stories are true. That is, until he meets with his daughter and learns about her favorite journalism class. Through their conversations, the book opens our eyes to the elements of stories our minds create and therefore enables us to re-examine the things that we too often assume to be true. Once you learn your ABCs, you may write your own tales differently and in a way that's more likely to get you the endings that you seek. It's available now on Amazon. I'll put the link in the show notes. Go get it. Also, a quick reminder, I have a couple spots left in my People Leadership Development Group coaching cohort. This isn't another leadership program that teaches you theory. This is 6 months of transformation, where you shift from being stuck in execution mode to leading with strategic clarity and genuine impact. Build the trust that makes delegation actually work, give feedback that lands, develop people who step up, create the conditions where you and your team will thrive all together. Also, you have a lot of people who really get where you are and are happy to talk about it with you. Wouldn't that be a relief? Okay, reach out at julieharrisoliver.com. Go.
Which you're probably curious about.
Yeah, I am. Go.
Is how aligned are you? So are you living your core values? Are you spending time on them? And there's different tools and methodologies out there. I have my clients sort of rate on a scale 1 to 5 how aligned they are. But the more important part is then to talk about describe what's happening, right? What are they doing? What's getting in the way? Or if they're super aligned, what's showing up in that sense? And then once you have that view, it's about identifying what needs to shift in order to gain that alignment.
I have a lot of noise in my head right now. You just illuminated something for me, and there's being really personal. Hearing myself how I aligned those values of freedom, and then recognizing in my first marriage how I was so pigeonholed into a gender role I did not want. It illuminates a lot of things for me in the list of all the reasons I needed to get out that hadn't been so clear to me before until you just said that. Thank you for taking me on a learning journey.
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay, next.
Yeah, so really the next piece is to figure out what needs to shift in order to get that alignment. Because once you are living your core values, it should bring you joy. The goal is to live. A lot of times people say, what is coaching? What's the point? And I just distill it into, I want my clients to live their best life ever. And to me, that means they're living fully with joy. One of the things that gets in the way is those with busy lives. And so they say, I want to be doing all these things and I want to be aligned to my core values, but I can't fit it in. So I'll do that in 5 years, or I'll do that 10 years when I retire. That's often how people think about spending time on things that bring them joy, which makes me very sad.
I'll do it once I shore up my 401k, once I get my kids through college, once I have a client right now once I get my kid grown up, then I'll face my life. Yeah.
It's very easy.
So easy to put it off someday. But I think, especially right now, these times we're living in, we have no idea what someday is. We have no idea how much time we have. Like, I'll put forward, we know hardly anything right now.
I came up with a silly little sort of statement, but it's a big part of how I think about life, which is why wait, integrate. And I said it with a client. We were on the fly because this was a client that I absolutely adore. And he had this big epiphany. If he'll probably listen to this and he'll know that he was going to start, and he was so excited. He and his wife had a conversation about it in 10 years time, that they had all the plans. And I said, okay, now let's talk about today and how are we going to integrate? And at first he was deflated. The joy of contemplating the 10 years out was bringing him so much joy. And the idea of now really created anxiety at first, because he immediately thought about, I can't fit it in. I work 7 to 7. When I get home, then it's my family and then a little bit of whatever before bed.
Do I have to change my whole life right now in order to?
Yeah, it's not realistic. All the thoughts. And when we started to unpack it and look at some of the things he wanted to be spending time on and smaller bite-sized ways to integrate that, it became much more realistic that there were ways to do that now. And sometimes people are in a job that, of course, the job is defined for them and it has a set of roles, responsibilities. And so they stay in that box. A lot of times I'm working with CFOs or financial leaders, and they have a creative side to them that they feel they really can't integrate into the role. And I had a finance career. And for me, the big piece was really around people, right? People and connection. And how do I do that in a big, impactful way? And ways that I did that was taking on roles leading the mentoring program for the organization or the diversity and inclusion program. And I was, again, in an environment that encouraged those types of things to be even happening in the workplace. But it really was a way for me to spend time on that very important core value that I had and fulfill that need while I was CFOing, doing that finance leadership. So it's a different way of thinking about not the black and white and I have to stay in this box, but I could actually really create something different if I'm a little more open-minded.
And it can be small things. And as Aaron Winkler McHugh was talking about, it can be little experiments. You can
I love that word.
try little things. I knew an executive who, huge executive job, also a musician, had a keyboard in his office. He spent his lunchtime playing the piano.
Amazing.
And when you're saying the CFOs were super creative and artists, I thought, oh, they must be musicians because of the math music.
Yeah, they are. And we talked about ways to even create space and time when they're working at home to do that. There's something else that's even a couple different angles I want to take this, but one is also for leaders, right? If you're leading a team and you're really trying to optimize the output of your team, the success of your team, the delivery, is actually to take the time to get to know your people on a very personal level and understand their core values. Going so far as to even doing a core values workshop or doing work in that space together. Because a lot of times leaders, someone comes into a job, the job has a job description, and that's what they're expected to do. And you as the leader are evaluating them against those sets of responsibilities. And without any further exploration, you might miss a really big opportunity to reshuffle job roles and responsibilities within job roles to better match what drives your team members. So imagine really understanding that you have person X that's really into being super detailed and into the weeds of spreadsheets and analyzing data and all that. Let's say they're in a more strategic role, a role that requires a bit more innovation and creativity. And then on the flip side, you have somebody who has the opposing skill set. And without exploring, maybe they just they interviewed well, they have the experience, they got into those roles, but you have a real opportunity. And it could even be that they stay in their same jobs, but you're just shuffling certain responsibilities around. So you're modifying the job description. It's an extremely powerful way to shift that person's job much more into purpose work that really feels good to them.
And alignment. Yeah, I think you just made the case for why this is not like soft woo-woo stuff that is just taking you away from the core work. I think you just make the case why it's vital.
Yeah, match the skills, match the passions. Really, one also creates connection, right? Taking the time to get to know people that work for you, with you on a personal level, taking time for that. It's a win-win, right? They feel the connection. They feel that you care. They're willing to be more vulnerable because of that. And then you have this opportunity to optimize the work and improve business results. So I think it's a real win-win.
Yeah, and also improve retention, improve loyalty, improve people's effort for this company who cares about them.
Yeah.
Win-win.
Win-win. It's amazing.
What else?
Something else that I think gets in the way is strengths versus values, meaning you're really good at something. So therefore, that's what you should do, versus understanding what drives you and what brings you joy. And that's what you should do. I think there's a lot of confusion in society now, and I'll get into the why behind this, of strengths versus core values and what really matters. And you see it as parents with kids, and your kids in their younger years start to show up that they're good at something. Let's pick a sport, right? And so they start to get good at a sport, and you as a parent get excited for them that they're good at the sport, but then you start to really get a little over the top too involved. And suddenly that kid that's really good at the sport, as they grow into their middle school and high school years, is great at something and completely misaligned with what they want to be doing
Mm.
because you didn't ask or you didn't let them explore or you didn't give them that sort of freedom. And I think in society, we are getting into a bit of groupthink where everybody's doing it. So that's okay. Like we can all just be those
This is the
crazy
path.
soccer moms on the side and my kid is good and right and all this stuff is happening. But I do think that, you're born with those core values. You're born with those things that really drive you. But then you're in a family system, which influences what's expected of you, right? It's influencing what you see you should be doing. So there's a bit of should, I should do this. And then there's just expectations that are set in that family system. Then there's the school system, and the school system has a curriculum. And so that's also influencing. Like I said, me at Penn, it was like, what am I going to be? I'll do Wharton and business and right. But even earlier, the curriculum that's shaped for kids in elementary school and on is shaping what they're influenced in terms of their learning and how they express themselves.
I've heard like by third grade, you're on a path.
Yeah.
You're on a track by third grade.
That's really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's many other influential things, right? There's your religion and expectations that are set there. And then just society in general, right? The generation you're growing up in, the generation above you, and the expectations they're setting. I think there's an opportunity to, as you grow up and allow yourself to do this work, is to go back to the essence of who you were as a kid and really think about. And that's why this visual for me of age 8 Heather sitting with Abe, and I remember vividly like where we sat. We like sat by the elevators because there were some chairs. It wasn't a big lobby. And I remember the feeling it's so vivid. And yet it's many decades ago. We won't say how many, but many decades ago.
That's incredible because it is such a gift to listen to old people's stories. And for you to do that as an 8-year-old, that's unusual and also telling. I love that you harken back to that as the touchstone of, I was onto something.
Yeah.
So do you ask people to think about what were you doing when you were 8 or 10 or 12?
Yeah. Yeah. So when we do the values work, part of the process is I usually do a session around exploring. So after they've got their list of the 15, that first round, we do a session which navigates into a variety of different moments in their life and different questions that help them to further reflect, one, to make sure they're not missing anything, but also to start to prioritize. So things like a peak moment in your life, like a really just like incredible peak moment. What were you doing? Who were you with? How did you feel? And just really deep dive. And they really get into the details of it. And usually what comes out of that is, oh, wow, like I love adventure, or I really love learning, or whatever that experience is. So that's a question. Must-haves, like what are things that are non-negotiables for you? And again, that as you dig into that, really, it brings to life further sort of an understanding of self and therefore the core values. So there's a set of questions that I use that allows you to dig deeper and figure that out as a next step.
It brings up so much. I have a client now who, in doing that exercise, talking about that peak experience and then having a moment of that there's such a gap between where I am right now and what that was. What are the pieces that are missing there? And then what do I need to do to creep back in that direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the questions you ask?
Yeah, so it's definitely that peak moments of incredible joy. So just really having them think about and a lot of people who are parents will say, when my child was born, that. But again, it's that then leads to core values around family, and a lot of times brings a lot of deep reflection. So the must-haves we talked about, things that you really don't like, So also reflecting the opposite, which just allows you to things that frustrate you to having that opposing negative reflection of things that annoy you or bother you, it brings out therefore something that is important.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another one. It's
And
usually just 3, 4, 5 questions because they go pretty deep. The other thing that's really powerful in this work of just to pivot a little bit is folks that are in transition, and especially in career transition, and are in that job hunt trying to figure out what next. Understanding the core values in that moment is really powerful for two reasons. One is to really think about what type of culture you want to be in what
100%.
type of workplace. And sometimes when you're in that job hunt phase of life or moment, you're not that you're desperate, but sometimes you can get desperate. It's like you at times will allow for misalignment to your core values. You say, it'll be fine. I'll deal with it. It's okay.
I'll work it out. I need this job. I can do it.
Yeah, I need the money. I need to take care of my family and I'll be able to tolerate it. But it ends up obviously not favorable for that person. And every client I work with that's in a culture or an environment that is misaligned to their core values, they are not happy and they are desperate to escape. The
It's so
other thing,
hard. But
yeah,
that needing a job quickly is also a very real thing.
it is a very real thing. It is a very real thing. But I'm working with a client and actually he's now in a role. But the other thing that he was realizing is that he was trying to show up when he was interviewing how he thought they wanted to see him.
Sure.
And in an hour-long interview or even a day long of interviews, you could do that, right? You can figure it out, navigate, okay, this is the culture. And so this is how I should show up, right? And not only are you going to end up in a culture that you're misaligned to and creates discomfort, now they have met somebody who is not you. And so imagine now you're entering this job in a place you're not comfortable, and you now have to show up in a way that is not your authentic self. Back to the title of today's talk. So when you show up as your authentic self in the interview process, one, you're going to do much better in the interview because
Yeah.
you get to be you. So there's no sort of facade that you're putting on.
Oh,
And
it's a
so
lot
in
of
your,
work to be
I was
second
going to say, like
guessing
in your
what you think they
body,
want you to hear.
yeah. And the risk then is if they fall in love with this other person, you have to then be that person for the next years, X years that you work there. If you last
Yeah.
that long, you probably won't. You probably burn out. And one of the things we haven't talked about is how do I know? Like, how do I know if I'm being authentic
Mm-hmm.
and if I'm being my authentic self, if I'm living my core values? And the simple answer is you feel it in your body. You will know physically, somatically, that you are absolutely just in flow. It
Mm-hmm.
just feels natural. You want to be doing it and you enjoy the process, not just the results. So when you're actually doing the work and not just getting that recognition for this great business result, but actually you're enjoying doing the work, that's when you know that you're aligned to your core values.
How might you know when you're not aligned if you're not particularly paying attention to your body?
If you're not paying attention, then I would encourage you to reflect and think about how you felt because it would show up if you're reflecting in the sense that you probably feel a lot of anxiety and stress in trying to do this work that doesn't feel right to you, that doesn't feel good, or be in a culture that feels uncomfortable, or be with people that aren't your people. And so it will probably show up in this everyday sort of feeling of stress and anxiety because you're not really living your core values. You're not really aligned. I'm not sure I answered your question
No, you
exactly.
did. I was thinking about Sunday scaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Sunday scaries. You're
I
dreading, it, right?
I was in a job once where long after we all left the job, I was talking to two or three different people, and we all said the same thing, which is we would pull into the parking lot, we would have to sit, take a few deep breaths, like steel ourselves before walking into the building.
Yeah.
And it was a moment in time that was so stressful and toxic, and so many people were struggling. And
Mhm.
that's an indicator. If you have to really gird your loins in the parking lot
Yeah.
before you walk in to face whatever you're going to face that day. I mean, that's an extreme example, and it was obvious. I knew I was not in alignment, but
Yeah.
that's not just how work is.
Yeah.
Or
And
has to be.
you're probably having a lot of water cooler chats about
Yeah.
how awful it is, or venting at home to your partner or family, and they see the stress, and you're probably not doing your best work. It's most
No,
like,
and you're modeling to your children that work sucks and it's
right.
terrible to work.
Yeah.
And that's,
Yeah.
I think if we can model to our children, like, you can do purposeful, meaningful work in the world, what a joy, what a gift.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference.
Absolutely. When I interviewed for Hudson with Keith Neighbor, and I remember he said, why do you want to do coaching? And my answer to him was, because I could do this all day, every day. I just absolutely love it. It's all I want to do. And when I answered him, I just felt it. I feel it fully all the time. I actually prefer to do it more than many things in my life. I prioritize it and just really love it.
That's how you know.
That's how you know.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have asked you? Time is flying. Any conclusion you would leave us with?
The conclusion I would leave us with is, give yourself the space to do the work. Take the time, because you don't have to wait 10 years.
Yeah.
So it is something that you can start to live with joy, not live from fear, and really, like I said, just live your best life and do it every day and really integrate. So don't wait.
Integrate. How can people find you, Heather? I know you have a gorgeous website. Tell them how to find it.
Yeah, my website is heatherpomerantz.com. So feel free to check it out. And all my contact information is there, as well as on LinkedIn.
Great. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. This was fun. Appreciate it.
This has been Deep Work Out Loud. I'm Julie Harris-Oliver. I'd like to thank Heather Pomerantz for joining the podcast. If any of this resonates with you, please subscribe, leave a review at all the podcast places. And if you'd like to work with me, you can find me at julieharrisoliver.com. Let me leave you with this invitation. What might it look like for you to do step 1? Google, what's a list of values? And start going through them. Pick out 10, 15. Think about why are these your values? What do they mean to you? Do that first step. Try some things. Report back. Thanks for listening. See you next time.